And we really did start by not knowing. And actually that proved to be a very interesting and useful situation, because the very act of going out to ask advice helped to build the first set of relationships that we then came to build on. So often ignorance is seen as a barrier to doing something, but actually, if you're in a constructive situation of not knowing, it can be extremely interesting and creative because you don't know what the rules are. So the motivation, the wider political and economic context in which this began was the rise of free market politics and a smaller state in the government of Margaret Thatcher. And public subsidy for the arts was at standstill. So our only source of income was to look for sponsorship. But we needed to invent a new language, as I say, and that's how we went to ask for advice. And we learnt that the business reasons for sponsorship were reaching new markets. And that was done through often a logo on publicity or the banners, or today on YouTube inserts or on your website and so on. Also, our audience, as I mentioned earlier, was more akin to a rock and pop audience. They were early adopters in the marketing speak. You get early adopters and then followers. I can't remember all the terminology, but certainly early adopters are the ones that people developing new products want to have visibility with. So we were able to engage, suppliers of gin and beer to, support our receptions and that kind of thing. And that's called product sampling. Of course, brand or company image and to enhance brand company image, and some of the motivations for that would be good corporate citizenship. So, a company wants to look good. So a telecoms company might sponsor your work with young people or something like that because they want to be seen as warm and good communicators. License to operate. Sometimes the Vietnamese production, for example, we generated some funds from British Gas that was exploring gas extraction in Vietnam. So they were interested in meeting the Vietnamese ambassador and looking good with Vietnam. And we often were doing manoeuvrings behind the scenes to bring the diplomatic staff in London in touch with the businesses that we were seeking to engage. Press and broadcast media coverage, obviously they were after that. That wasn't very easy to get because the British press, the editors, often cross out the, edit any mention of a commercial sponsor because they say they should be buying the advertising. So it's never straightforward, but you can maneuver some things. And radio is often not the BBC, but other commercial radio can be useful in promoting sponsors. Senior level networking, that's I mentioned the diplomats and so on. So a lot of parties go into sponsorship because whatever funds people give, they want to be thanked, they want to meet people, or they want to go to the art, the performances that they're sponsoring. So they want to feel good about it. And that's a lot of the work that we did together, I did with colleagues. And then finally, client and employee entertainment. Just simply having tickets to shows and events. It has to be said that the vast majority of the productions that we presented were not sponsorable commercially. They were controversial, they were difficult, business people didn't like the theatre. So it was only the popular, very obvious productions or very specialised productions with a particular territory, such as Vietnam, that we were able to get sponsorship for. And we had to be realistic about which we could and which we couldn't. So getting started, there are very clear and important aspects, if one is seeking to get money, that need to be considered. And I'm not sufficiently familiar with your situation here, but certainly it helped for us in the UK that we were a legal entity, because anybody giving you money needs to know that you're not going to run off with it or go to Rio. So there is a ready-made constitution in the UK, which is a company limited by guarantee and also with charitable status, so that we can receive donations and so on. So, and then also that has a board of trustees who are fully accountable for the financial probity of the company, and also the strategic overview to make sure that it remains within the principles of that constitution. Our board members were great. We recruited them because they were expert in a particular area, or would question what we were doing, would be critical friends, so that, there was a debate, a dialogue within the board itself. In terms of sponsorship, we also recruited an informal committee called a development council. And those were people in advertising, in promotion, in banking, in anybody we could get hold of who we thought might be useful. And it was very hard work running that committee with regular meetings, because often they'd make a suggestion that you'd ruled out the week before. So what I tended to do was hold a meeting once every 3 months, and then deal with the individual members on a one-to-one basis around specific issues, so that you were using the useful people. And then some of those development council members became a board member because we got to know them and we trusted them and so on. So it was actually a very useful organisational device. Just so you know the figures, our overall budget in 2001 was 2.3 million, and the sponsorship that we gained was around 13% of that budget, and the rest of that money came from a huge number of sources, all of which would need their individual relationships, lobbying, and caring for. And they would include public funds, trust and foundations, foreign cultural funds, and sponsorship in kind, and so on.